Hi, and welcome to the Fighting Words Northern Ireland podcast, where we interview members of our teen writers group, Write Club, to find out about their writing inspiration, their top tips, and to hear some of their work. Write Club is open to all teens in Northern Ireland who would like to write or would like to give it a go. We meet online and in person, and we welcome all story writers, poetry writers, playwrights, or any other kind of writing you can think of. We're a free drop-in club where you'll get support and feedback from the club mentors and members if you would like to share your work. I'm McCaughrain. I write novels for teenagers, and I'm a Write Club mentor. And today on the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Kaila, who is 15 and has been writing novels for quite a while already. Hi, Kaila. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi.
Kaila, you've been a member of Write Club for quite a while, but I know you were writing even before that. Why did you decide that you wanted to be part of a writing group?
I joined Write Club in July in 2021, and I just wanted to see how other people write and learn from them and see, what works for them and why certain things don't work for them. And it just seemed like a really great community to get involved in. So
That's brilliant. Do you think it's helped your writing?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've learned a lot from the feedback that I've gotten, especially from the other members and how they handle writing and all of their work. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's so useful actually to have friends who write. You learn so much from other writers. What kind of writing do you like to do? I know you write stories at the minute, but have you always written stories?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing since I was really young, and I used to love writing historical fiction and different things like that because I was completely obsessed with history. I loved it, but then I've kind of changed, and now I love writing stuff that is set in Northern Ireland or that deals with, our culture and things like that. So it's changed over time, but yeah, I just love writing stories in general of any type.
Fantastic. And I know that you have had your work published through several outlets in various competitions and journals. And I believe you're now reviewing books for the Paper Lanterns Journal. What story or writing achievement are you most proud of?
I would be most proud of my novel, I suppose, the first one that I wrote. I It was during the first lockdown, so I would have only been really 12 at the time, and it took a long time to write it, and I didn't think I was ever going to see it published, but when it was just an indescribable feeling, like seeing it and like knowing that it was mine. And yeah, I mean, I'm proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. That's an amazing thing to have done at 12 years old. And you published that on Amazon. Do you do that yourself? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I did that myself. Uh, I've sort of researched different ways of like how publishing worked, and I learned about a lot about that. And then I just decided on Amazon, and I decided that I'd written this novel, and it was a bit of my work like nobody had seen before, and so I just thought, well, maybe someone out there wants to read it, and maybe someone out there could learn something from it, or they could even just enjoy it. And that was the main motivation for me to publish it, because I just thought if one person enjoys it, I'll have done something right. So
Absolutely. Well done. So I suppose my next question is about why you write, because there are so many different reasons that people write. Like, do you see yourself as a professional writer in the future, or do you write just for your own enjoyment, or to sort out your thoughts, or for your friends to read, or for some other reason? Why do you write, and why is writing important to you?
I write because I loved reading when I was younger, and I loved the escapism that I got from stories. Um, it's also just a way of releasing all the thoughts that I've had and different opinions that I have, and all these different things that are in my head that I love just putting it on a page. It's really a nice thing to do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's such an important outlet, I think. And I love that you came to it through your own reading. Speaking of which, I'm now going to ask you if you would like to read us some of your work, and then we'll talk a bit more about how you approach writing. I believe you've got the first chapter of the novel you're working on at the moment for us. Is that right?
Yep, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just let you introduce it and go ahead and read.
Yes, so this is the first chapter of a writing project that I'm working on at the minute, titled The Strike of a Slither. The strike of a slither could change the world. One whack of that white bullet, outlined by black stripes, could divide humanity. It could be sliced by a wooden weapon faster than I could blink. The ball obeys the orders of my herd, a reflection of the years that I've trained, the family that I'm from. For generations, we've reached stardom, and I'm prepared to enter the galaxy. I examine the tiny ball of culture as I stand on my emerald pitch. I'm only messing. I've been playing this game all my life, owing to my dad, and his dad, and the fellow before him. Why would I miss a random shot? The smirk curves around my cheek as I dander across the grass. My head rests on my shoulder. I grip the slither. There's always a satisfying crack when the strike happens, a sound that I'm well used to. I'm the McCaughrain family's top player. I fear nobody or their man. Penalty! My dad roars, squeezing the metal gates of the pitch. He's as broad as a slice of bread, tall enough for his navy hat to touch the clouds. I'm forced to train until I'm 90, but at least I'll have that muscle. Slick-haired and narrow eyes, I'm his clone already. Take the strike, son. I spin the slither between my fingers, flicking a shoelace off my football boot. The goal stands ahead. A huddle of enemy players scramble to cover the net. Their hurls point to the sky, wobbling with the crashing winds. The bullets prepared, pressing against my scarred palm. A part of me clicks, a swoosh through my gut. St. Colum's GAA Club was founded centuries ago, like back when the dinosaurs ran about playing rounders. My dad runs the place from gathering the Gaelic balls to teaching toddlers to swing. I'm the captain of my hurling team. Shocking, I know. Everyone squints at each twist of my wrist, waiting for the match when the McCaughrain sun messes up. They might be waiting for a good while. I glare at the crowd through the blurred bars of my helmet. A message transports those who witness the match, criticizing their wrinkled brows. I face the sidelines of the pitch, squeezing my shoulders. Aim for the goal. Breathe out. Score a point. As I focus, I give myself a speedy bit of motivation. I'm Kieran McCaughrain, I mutter as my fingers tremble. That name's all I'll ever be. The ball tosses up. Every player on our home pitch freezes, each breath swallowed to their neon boots. I've pucked a dozen times before a final score. Both hands grasp the stick of the hurl as the rounded edge swings to whack the slither. There's always a crack when the ball hits. The crack doesn't come.
Kaila, that was amazing. What a fantastic opening for a book. And Key is just such a personality right from chapter one. As Kaila knows, because I rave about it at Right Club, I am very invested in Key's life now. At Right Club, we are lucky enough to have read up to, I think it's chapter 22 of this story now, because Kaila has been putting it on our website a chapter at a time, and we are all enjoying it so much. So what is it like, Kaila, to have people reading your story and waiting for the next chapter?
It's great. I mean, not only to have people read your story, but to have people really understand it. Because, I mean, you could give your work to anybody and you could ask them like for feedback on it, and they tell you like it's good, and while that's really appreciated, there's just something really special about having people really invested in your work and understanding it and really taking each line apart. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate people taking the time to do it. So yeah, it's really useful and it's definitely improved my writing.
Yeah. Does it encourage you to keep going to write the next chapter?
Yeah, because it feels like you have an audience to write for, and yeah, it's very motivating.
Fantastic. I mean, I knew nothing at all about hurling when I started reading your book, but you've created such a believable and atmospheric world that I actually want to go and watch a match now, which is impressive because I'm not a sporty person. What was your inspiration for the story? Like, was there a theme or a message that you wanted to explore or something that gave you the idea? Where did the story come from?
It started with the advice, write what you know, because I'd never understood that, and I always thought, well, what do I know, and what does that even mean? And it wasn't until I looked back on things that I've experienced, and I thought, well, maybe there is something I know that nobody else knows, or something I've experienced. And for me, that was camogie because I played it for a long time, and I thought, why don't I just put that into a story? Because I find that it's not something that's talked about a lot, and it's not something that people would write about quite a bit. So that was one of the main things. Also, with the main character, Kay or Kieran, I was inspired by the fact that there aren't a lot of stories that would kind of highlight the sort of popular kids, if you know what I mean. Because a lot would focus on the people that don't fit in but are trying to find themselves. And I thought, well, maybe the people that already fit in are still trying to find themselves as well. Maybe they're not entirely happy with their lives. So although they, well, in this story, he might come across as a bit arrogant at times when he thinks he's the best thing. I love writing a story about someone who's already thinks you would assume they've got everything, but still trying to find themselves as well. And I think people should be given that chance.
That's such a good point about that kind of character. They do tend to get left out of fiction. It's always about the underdog, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, they have stuff going on too, and that's something that I love about the story. And I love that you've written about something that you know. I think a lot of young writers, when they start to write, think they have to write stuff set in America or or England because that's what they read about. Because they rarely see books set in Northern Ireland. So I love that you've set it in Northern Ireland, and it absolutely comes across that you know that world. It makes it such a good story. So that is fantastic. So undertaking an entire novel is no mean feat, and this is your third, I believe. So you plan the story in advance, or do you make it up as you go along, or a bit of both? What works for you?
Well, I'm a complete planner. I mean, I love making maps and planning my characters and everything, or even to visualize the story. Sometimes when I'm stuck, I make like Pinterest boards or playlists or different things so I can really get into that world. Um, but yeah, I think I plan out everything, but it never goes to plan. Like I start writing it and the characters take it one way, or the story goes a different way, or it's set somewhere completely different that I thought it was going to be set. And I think that's okay because I see the planning stages as getting to know the story and get a feel for it. And then when I put it on the page, it's really not mine. It's a story on its own, and I'm just sort of describing what happens.
That's a lovely feeling, actually, when your characters take over. That's really nice. Brilliant. Do you ever get stuck when you're writing? And if so, how do you get going again? What would be your top tip for someone with a bit of writer's block?
Well, I get stuck all the time, especially with characters not knowing where they're supposed to go. And one thing that I find really useful is I write 500-word short stories about based on the novel, but from the first person perspective of the different characters in the story. So outside of the main character, even a lot of the time it would be like an antagonist, like somebody that can only really be seen as bad by the protagonist, but maybe has their own stuff going on. I love writing stories from their perspective, so that's definitely my top tip. Get inside the heads of your other characters because they've got their own stories. Even if you don't see them in your one, you still get to know them. And then for me, that's how I continue on because I feel like I know them all better and I know why they do things and what their motivations are.
That's such a great tip. I love that. Yeah, I always think that when you're stuck, it's because you don't know your character well enough and you need to have a little think about them. But thinking about your other characters in the story as well is a brilliant idea. Fantastic. Thank you, Kaila. So, Kaila, you're quite an experienced writer by now. What would you tell to a young person who is interested in writing but maybe not sure where to start?
Well, I tell them to join Write Club, but other than that, I'd say just start reading like you're going to write stories. Like that's something I definitely find really useful recently. Is more so before I started writing this story a few months ago, but before that, I had spent a long time reading and trying to read stories like the one I wanted to write, and just thinking about how the plot unfolded throughout the story and what the characters were like and how they changed, and reading like a writer, I suppose. So that's definitely something I would say. Just read, but also don't be afraid to just look at a blank page and put down whatever comes to your head, like completely pants it. Just write and you will find a story, and you can edit it and you can always change it, but I would just say just go for it.
Brilliant. That's fantastic advice. And I love that I love your idea of reading like a writer. That's so good. And speaking of which, like we all know that the best way to learn to read is, or to learn to write is to read. So my last question is, can you recommend a great book for our listeners?
Well, I read a great one recently. The one I reviewed for Paper Lanterns, which was The First Thing About You by Chaz Hayden. I thought it was a brilliant book. But probably my favorite of all time would be I love Eleanor Park by Rainbow Rowell. I think it's a fantastic novel, so I would definitely recommend that. But yeah, if I spoke about every book I'd love, I think I'd be here forever. So
Yeah, it's very hard to isolate one, but yeah, I love that Eleanor and Park as well. I would second that. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today, Kaila. I'm sure there are young writers out there who have been inspired and learned a lot from you and really enjoyed your reading. So thank you so much for being here today. thanks for everyone for listening. If you are a teen writer in Northern Ireland and you'd like to join a friendly and supportive writing group, then check out the Fighting Words Northern Ireland website. You'd be very welcome.